Hi, everyone. This is Kait Stephens. Welcome back to another episode of the Omnichannel Marketer. Today, I have Kun Yang, CEO and co-founder of Pricklee, on the show today. Hey, Kun, how are you?
Hey, Kate. Nice to see you again.
Likewise. I am excited to tell your story. So why don't we just kick things off with, tell us how you got to, founding Pricklee. What's your background?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been a really, really interesting journey. So my co-founder and I were both healthcare workers, we're both pharmacists. And so growing up, health and wellness was really core to our singular beliefs. And then also, just being first generation Americans, just seeing our parents and their entrepreneurial journey, I think those values really kind of were instilled in us from a pretty early age. Now, growing up, I'm sure most of you guys were the same, but we grew up in the 90s and 2000s, and brands were just so ubiquitous and so fun and so energetic, but we consumed a lot of really unhealthy drinks and artificial products, high sugar products. And so as we kind of went through our healthcare experiences, just wanting to kind of think about how can we contribute to population health? How can we just help people live healthier lives and make it easier, accessible, but also not miss that nostalgic feeling of fun that all of these brands encompass back in the 90s. And so as we looked at, just how things had evolved and how much emphasis people had placed on the types of ingredients and products they were consuming, we were just really excited about the potential of making a product that people deserved in terms of quality, but also servicing their emotional needs from a brand perspective. So when my partner, growing up in Lebanon, introduced us to cactus water that his and his family kind of would always make every time they played sports or anytime they got sick, because it was packed with electrolytes, antioxidants, vitamin C, we tasted it the first time and we were just blown away by how good it tasted, how amazing the benefits were. And it just seemed like this perfect fit for all the things that we cared about, all of our values, all of our passions. And then to have something that was so authentic to who he was introduced to us at the same time was just like this amazing serendipitous moment that was like, we have to bring this to the market. So that's sort of the founding story of Pricklee and how it all came together.
And so what did that look like? How did you bring Pricklee to the market, as a starting place?
With a lot of trials and tribulations, a lot of failures in the journey, I would say, for sure. Coming, again, from a different industry altogether, it just felt like we were starting from the very beginning, starting from scratch and understanding what this whole world looked like. And quite honestly, it was a very, very complex and vast one, especially because there's so many, channels within this business, right? From retail to even just like how to market, how to distribute, and then thinking about how do we leverage other tools like social media, how we think about, online channels, how we think about food service, how we think about on-prem, how we think about even PR and all these other things that all kind of come hand in hand. It just felt like for everything that we were doing it for the first time, and it felt never ending, right? So it was a lot of trials, a lot of error, and a lot of just testing. And I think, just being scientists by training, testing and failing was sort of like in our DNA, and we just tested really quickly, we failed really quickly, and we just kept learning. And so as we kept going through that process, it just eventually became clearer and clearer what our path forward was. And as we head into 2023, we're just really excited because for the first time, it feels like we really have a playbook that's ours to own, that we've tested, that we have some strong data and signals behind, and we can really just start to think about scaling this thing now with a lot of, confidence.
So I'd love to hear, what were some of those failures, or, could you give an example there? And then on the flip side, would love to hear more about the playbook that's working and, how you arrived at figuring out that was working.
Yeah, everything. I think the way to sum it up is like everything we did felt like it was in isolation, and a lot of it was very top of funnel. So it felt like the things that made sense to us in terms of getting the brand out there were very top of funnel, and maybe connecting the dots to the middle and bottom of the funnel were a little bit more challenging, because it's also in a time where all these channels were also just kind of growing for the first time, right? Social media isn't this thing that has been around in the way that it looks today forever. It's constantly evolving, right? The playbook's always changing, but a lot of it is top of funnel initially, right? As you kind of start to build out that ecosystem. And I think as you're starting out as a new brand and you're not fully sure of what your brand identity is, or how do you contextualize the product and how do you really convey the true value and the benefits that it has for your audience, and even a product as broad as Pricklee cactus water, where it's a natural, healthy product that is truly approachable for a wide audience, consumers. I think narrowing that focus down to figure out that person that you're really connecting with, and where are they, and how do you authentically, provide the most value to those individuals and those consumers. That all goes hand in hand into making it harder and harder for that middle and bottom of funnel to really be high conversion and zoned in. And so again, a lot of the top of funnel stuff becomes a lot more easy and clear, right? And that's really where we spent a lot of the time, I wouldn't say failing, but just optimizing for, But I will give a specific example of failure that was a big lesson that we learned in our first year, which is we just weren't really sure how to even communicate what our product was. We were thinking, and some of it was some fear on our end of like, do we communicate it as a cactus water? Like what is going to be the approachability of that? And so we initially launched with the superfruit water is what it was called. And the first question we had was like, well, what's the superfruit? And it's like, oh, it's a cactus. Of course, that education we eventually learned very quickly was additional, unoptimized dollars that we had to spend on from a marketing perspective. So, just over time, all those things led to just a more refined product, a more approachable product, and a product that really, again, authentically represented who we were, represented and championed the cactus, and also just really connected with our audience.
And how did you get that customer feedback? Oh, even those questions, where was that coming from?
All different signals. We always kind of pride ourselves in we'll never outsource something that we've never done ourselves. And so we still, to this day, we love demoing. I try to get out there at least, a couple times a month just to interface with our customers and just get a feel for, hey, does our messaging still resonate? Does our product still resonate? Is it still servicing individuals and helping them, achieve their goals and helping them, convert to a healthier lifestyle? Is it doing that the best that it can? And we continue to optimize that way. So that's been probably my favorite way, is just like meeting consumers face to face. But of course, D2C was such an incredible learning channel, especially back before iOS 14. And when we first launched, February 2021, it felt like very much the primary acquisition channel. We've since obviously, built it retail first and DTC to supplement, but at the time it did feel that way. And I think a lot of brands probably felt the same during that growth phase, right? And so we learned a lot that way, just in terms of who the consumers were that were buying the product, understanding what the reviews were in terms of what were the attributes that consumers loved. And that was like actually a really good learning. Is the number one reason why people bought cactus water again and again was the taste. And it wasn't just the benefits. And that was interesting unlock for us, because it was just a moment that we realized, look, when people think about cactus water, the first thing they're going to think of is it's already going to be a healthy product for them. So we should be focusing on the approachability of the product and the taste, and really communicating just how incredible this product is from an actual consumption standpoint, rather than just focus on the benefits. And that's really helped us quite a bit too in our learnings.
So did you launch pure D2C first?
I would say it was like our first year was probably 80% of our sales were D2C, and then 20% were retail. And again, it wasn't intentional. It just played out that way. And I think some of it had to do with our distribution, strategy at the initial launch of our business. And since then, it's probably significantly kind of reversed in terms of that pyramid. But it's not because D2C isn't a viable channel. It's just that our strategy now comes from a place where the entire funnel starts from discovery and starts from this idea of like, our goal is to get as many cans into as many unique hands as possible with the least amount of capital required and with the most emotional impact. And so as we kind of optimize our strategy around that becomes the funnel decision making that we think about. How do we leverage D2C to support our retail business?
So, talk to me about this playbook for Pricklee that you're excited about. I actually had another guest on the podcast that doesn't agree with the word playbook because it's different for every brand. However, the way that you're talking about it is like, this is Pricklee's playbook. Talk to me about what you've learned and, what you're excited about in 2023, for that.
Yeah, and I agree with that sentiment. I think every brand has a different playbook and, it's uniquely theirs. But I do think it's important to find out what works for you and scale those learnings, because I think too much imitation in this space doesn't lead to success. You have to find something that's uniquely and authentically yours to really own, right? And so for us, we know that we are a product that is unique. We're a unique product for really unique people. And we do live in a day and age where consumers are constantly, chasing new tastes and new discovery of new items. They're a lot more adventurous. This is even during COVID and beyond, you see the explosion of interest in terms of discovering new flavors and new ingredients and new cuisines. But, this is something that's been happening as a phenomenon for a long time. Like when I was growing up, we had really 3 or 4 channels that I'd always watch on TV and like 2 or 3 radio stations that I always listened to, right? Now it's like, and that was mainstream, but like, what is mainstream nowadays, right? The culture shifted so much where individualization, self-discovery, self-love, and appreciation has been such the forefront, and I think it's such a great opportunity for a product like ours that it's truly unique. to find its way into consumers that are looking for something different, but are delivering the same benefits and flavor profiles that they've always kind of been accustomed to. So for us, that playbook really points to the fact that like people need to try our product, and as we've seen over and over again, whether it's retail, D2C, when people try our product, they buy our product. And so it goes back to that formula that we really kind of highlighted, which is we think about everything from an economic standpoint, a P&L perspective of like, what is the lowest capital required to get as many, cans and as many unique hands as possible, because the more people that try this product, the more that word of mouth of, hey, look, this is a really cool new product that you've never had before that tastes amazing and is delivering those same benefits that you crave. That's how we believe that this brand scales the most, capital efficiently.
And so what is the lowest capital way for you to get, prickly water and, that trialability? What does that look like in practicality?
It's really demos. It's in-store demos. It's dollars spent in store. It's really just making sure that the consumer that's shopping at these locations that we're launching into have the greatest number of touch points possible, and they're the right consumers. And so we know that, the natural channel is going to be a great channel for us to initially build the foundation, but we also know that we're a conventional product as well. We sit in that really, perfect medium where this product can exist in many other different categories as well. But for us, excitedly, we're launching Sprouts actually, and nationwide, and that's a huge retailer launch for us. We expect that to be a strong cost driver for us from a revenue standpoint this year. And so we think about our business with a lot of focus. We admire, case studies like Southwest, right? Like, how do they build? They built with immense focus. They're like, we're only going to do short flights. We're not going to serve food. We're going to fly 747s. We're going to train everyone and optimize everything. And that allowed them to focus on customer experience. It allowed them to reduce costs. It allowed them to just optimize their business with a lot of focus. And that's how we see 2023. At a time like this when, capital is more and more costly, right? And you do have to think a lot about P&L. Like, we understand like the capital efficiency is going to come from winning in store, but not winning in store by saying yes to every opportunity and then spreading your resources across many different accounts and promo budgets and resources to drive awareness. It's really, how can we really win at some of our key retailers, build some really strong case studies to one, prove that we can do it, but then two, show future partners that, we really mean it when we say that we're here to partner with you. And so that's kind of how we see, the building of our brand.
So, talk to me about how you landed the Sprouts deal, and then, would love to hear a little bit more about how you're going to support your Sprouts launch as a brand and the different tactics that you have planned to make sure that you're successful when you launch in Sprouts.
Yeah, I think no different than most brands. We have worked with the broker for some time now. Well, actually for the last few months, and Sprouts was sort of one of our key retailers from the get-go. They're headquartered in Phoenix, Arizona. This is cactus country to the max, right? And Southwest. And so for us, like, when we first built our brand in the Northeast, it was always meant to be an incubation grounds for us to really understand how to build this thing, how to understand this business, how to scale this business, because we knew that, and we saw these signals already coming in, like from a wholesale perspective, all of our, or even online order perspective, we would just get sort of an outsized amount of business from like the Southwest without really any marketing efforts, because it's so ubiquitous, in Arizona, New Mexico, it's the state plan of Texas, it's all over California, it's on the coast. So regionality made a lot of sense to us, but we wanted to make sure that our first shot on goal there was our best shot on goal. And so through just testing and learning about our brand, we optimized our packaging, our product, our ingredients, our whole brand, to say the least. And as we started to see those signals come in that, this product was gaining more and more velocity as all these changes were being made, it felt like the right time to really step on the gas pedal. And so that's when we started to, reach out to, retailers like Sprouts. And when that partnership came through, it just helped us hit our KPI goals for door expansion almost like in the beginning of the year. So it just allowed us to then look at this and say, like, let's take a step back and now focus on execution instead of, chasing new doors, and really just drive strong partnership. That's how we started. That's how we, obtained the Sprouts account.
And so what will the Sprouts launch bring you to in terms of doors?
We'll be at probably 600 through that, but then we'll probably end the year around 700, and we'll just call it a day at that point, in terms of this year.
Great. And then, so how are you thinking about, I know you've mentioned sampling being a really important attribute. Like, what is your, game plan for this Sprouts launch, and how are you going to support them, making sure that Pricklee is killing it in Sprouts?
I think it just focus. Focus is super important. Focus, and then building a really, really robust merchandising and demo team. So we've actually been able, our brand, as we said, we're a really unique brand that attracts really unique people, not just from a consumer standpoint, but just even the partners that we tend to attract. We attract a really creative group of folks. Like a lot of our demo folks in New York happen to be people that are either, actors or creatives or dancers or promo workers. And it's because there's this like appreciation for like anyone can see themselves. This product gives people the permission to really just be themselves, right? And so we found just like a connectivity when it comes to community with this type of audience, and so we plan on scaling that actually across the country. And so we're building an in-house demo team across the entire country at 4 states where we believe the top Sprouts locations exist, and we're just going to hammer that trial as much as we can, and I meant with our obviously our promo business, but we already know that the levers that drive trial for our brand, promos, demos, some experiential, marketing, and then visibility, right? So getting secondary displays and things of that nature over time, and proving to Sprouts that we're deserving of that, right? That's really where a lot of this comes into. So we understand those levers, and it's just about now building it with as much cost effectiveness as possible. And that means not outsourcing. That means really doing it scrappily. And, that's how we've always built. We've just been a really scrappy organization since day one. So we'll just kind of continue leaning into that.
So on the day of your Sprouts launch, are you going to be in-store demoing?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure out like how we can. We're going to do about a month of like sort of baseline, right, just to get a feel for where we are. But as soon as May comes around, you can probably imagine that the entire team is going to be pretty activated. Myself, my partners, all of our team are going to be out there. And we have a pretty ambitious target of how many we're doing a month. We'll see if we can achieve that, but it's a big number, and we've never just done something like this. So that's why, one, we're really bullish, because we've been able to achieve the kind of success that we've had in store without this level of support. So just thinking what can happen if we really kind of put that focus to the test.
And what are the velocities expected for your type of product? Is it single serve? Talk to me about the format that your product will be.
Yeah, it's going to start out single serve, and I think the goal is obviously to build multi-pack. A lot of it's because you got to build habit, and we are trying to build habit, right? I mean, you think about what kind of coconut water has done in the past. They were the first to really kind of introduce this concept of natural hydration into the world, where consumers up to that point were really only drinking artificial sports drinks and sodas, and right? And so this idea of prioritizing natural hydration is something that we're going to continue to build that category with. And so that velocity in that category will just continue to expand year over year. And building habit into that, I think, is going to be really important. So multi-packs, I think in 2024, again, it's like the deeper we can lean into some of these partnerships and prove that we're willing to work hard, and also that we have success, can enable some of these, launches to actually happen, right? That very much aligns with like how we think about building velocity and also building habit into the way that people are consuming Pricklee.
Makes complete sense. And how do you think about, bridging the gap across now all of your different retail channels, your D2C? I think you sell on Amazon as well. How do you think about that end-to-end brand and consumer experience?
Yeah, one of our advisors said this so well, and he was like, how do you build into culture, like just, connecting and building an audience, right? Like, because we have so many touch points even in a demo, right? Or even if it's on shelf or, email and all this other stuff that we're doing online that a consumer in like a retail environment might never even like truly kind of connect with. And obviously, as you're very well aware, right? The advent of things like QR codes and technology that have now enabled the way that people kind of connect. So what we're thinking about is exactly that question, is like, how do we think about in every capacity funneling consumers into a really, really just engaging experience that connects them with the brand, gives them, ways to build community, and rewards people that are loyal to the brand. And again, just I think that was like a big unlock for us, is like just focusing on our people instead of trying to always get new people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so like a lot of the things that we do now are just to reward people that have always been with us and people that probably want to rep the brand a lot more than just trying to acquire new customers, right? So that really investment in that bottom and middle funnel has been really important. So then we're just thinking, okay, well, how do we keep capturing more and more consumers at that point of sale or point of demo, and then funnel them, into our ecosystem where we can just really show them what we're about and share our values and share that all the cool things that we're building for them. I think that that's really the unlock of how we can make this truly an omni-channel approach is we build that funnel, and then, at the end of the day, just try to funnel everyone, no matter what those touch points are, to that same kind of funnel with really just engaging, experiential marketing efforts.
Makes complete sense. So, Kun, what is something that you feel bold or passionate about that would be helpful for our audience?
I think one of the things is just finding a lot of authenticity in like the kinds of products and brands that are being built. I think those are always some of the strongest brands that I see, that I always admire. I'm always amazed by founders that have such authentic brands to themselves and to the communities and the teams that they build. One, because I think that is almost like a necessary piece of how, you can survive in these next couple of years, and so just making sure you get that right, get that focus down, and then focus on execution instead of innovation and scale and growth and rapid growth, because I think those days are kind of over, and I think the companies that really prioritize their existing partnerships, double down and just fundamentally find a way to build a sustainable and strong business are the ones that are really going to be able to then offer cool innovations, a couple of years down the road and get back to a point of innovation. But the next couple of years, just a really strong brand, a really good community, and just continuing to just deliver value to that community in ways that are capital efficient. I think that's kind of how I think about, strong business, and pretty bullish about that, I guess, in the next couple of years.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a theme that we've been hearing across our guests, is that the days of venture-backed hyper growth and just, ad spend for the sake of ad spend is gone. And now it's about, profitable focus and, building in a way that's, margin efficient. So completely makes sense from my perspective. Anything else tactically that you feel like Pricklee does well there that could be relevant to our listeners?
Experiential marketing. I think we've done things that we never thought we ever would do. And we've worn cactus suits in Times Square. We've gone in and actually even during Christmas, we did a really fun, campaign for us. We just thought it would be a fun thing to do. We didn't even really create any assets for it, but it was just a good way to give back. So we put on our cactus suits, we grabbed a little satchel that was sort of like Santa's bag, and we went into ShopRite and just kind of gave all the workers some hydration. Just reinvesting in partnerships and just doing things that are good for your community and good for the people that are supporting your brand. That was something that we really have realized, that's built some really strong relationships for us, over time. And so how do we just lean into that even more, and build community around those experiential efforts? I think that is really important. That human connection, is so important. And you just never know. All you need are a couple of whales, a couple of folks in each store that really love your product, and that sustains your velocity, And so how do you do that? By just being behind a computer? You can't, right? You have to be in those places and building real human contact to really drive that retail velocity home. So that's kind of how we think about experiential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just getting out there and hustling and being creative in your connecting with customers and partners, and completely resonate with that. So, all right, moving into our lightning round. Mm-hmm. So, favorite omni-channel brand?
My favorite omni-channel brand, Simple Human.
Mm-hmm.
User, I love the business model, and I think I'm a huge fan.
Thing that you would change about our industry?
In line with this conversation, probably like a D2C first mentality.
And what does that mean to you? And, how do you think about that differently in terms of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, just looking at the unit economics, really realizing you're spending a lot to get it in the hands of one consumer that may be a super fan, but also could be really disappointed. And that same dollar spent could be getting your product in the hands of 50 consumers. And maybe the chances and likelihood of finding some super fans in that, especially if they're super activated, in engaging with you in cactus suits and at a point of thirst and hydration, it just seems like those are building some stronger customer relationships that are more cost effective and can allow you to then, again, flow into that D2C mentality of okay, now if you want to buy bulk or if you want some experiences that you can't get in retail, then that makes a lot of sense. But to think D2C first for any brand that you're launching in 2023, if it may not make sense for every brand. Some brands it does, but I would imagine a lot don't. And so just kind of getting that out of the ecosystem and thinking, how do we dominate retail? Because that is still a lot of the ways that people buy products, especially in our industry.
Yep. Favorite podcast?
Joe Rogan.
I don't know that one. Favorite newsletter?
New York Times. I just feel like it's such a good pulse on culture.
Favorite book?
Favorite book. So the probably the most recent one that's been really impactful for our company and our personal relationships is called 6 Types of Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni.
And what is that about?
We've come from corporate America too. Like, we've done all these personality tests and things about who you are, and we've found a lot of value in those. But this was the first one that kind of, showed us some of the ways that companies get anything, a product or process from A to Z, that it requires 6 unique capabilities almost, right? And everyone has those 6 capabilities, but some people are really good at these things, some people are competent at these, and some of these are frustrations that take a lot of energy out of you to have to do. But you can do, and as founders, we have to kind of do all of them, right? Mm-hmm. But just realizing that as you're building team, as you're building the roles that need to be a little bit more tenacious versus others that need to be more inventive and or discerning, just, it helps you understand why people are the way that they are and how people maybe interact. And something that may have been seen as tension previously was just really somebody's, genius being really shining in a way that helps the business grow, especially if we're all on the same team. So it just helped us really understand one another a lot more and take things out of the guessing game and make it less emotional and a lot more hey, this is who I am, You got to kind of be careful. You don't want to box people in, but at the same time, it does help you get to know yourself a little bit more. And we found a lot of truth in it. So it's helped us quite a bit as an organization.
I love that. Thank you. I'm going to check that book out. Favorite event that you're excited about going to this year?
Probably Expo East. We didn't do Expo West this time around, but Expo East, we're going to be there. And it'll be after a huge summer for us. So we're just really excited to just take all those learnings and bring them to Expo East and see a lot of familiar faces. So hope to see you there too, Kate.
I will definitely be there. So Kun, where can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way personally. Find me on LinkedIn, Kun, Kun, last name is Yang, Yang, or just find us on Pricklee on LinkedIn. Social-wise, obviously Instagram, TikTok, and then our website and Amazon to those that want to purchase a couple of cases to support our brand.
Amazing. Well, I am so excited for your Sprouts launch and, to help announce it here on this podcast, and really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much, Kun.
Thanks so much for the opportunity and great to connect again, Kate.
Awesome. If you liked this podcast, follow me and the Bridge page on LinkedIn and Twitter for hot takes and tactical advice. If you really loved today's episode, we'd love a review on the podcasting platform of your choice, Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thanks for listening.